Hello students, welcome to Notebook. In today's video, we learn about the two of the three ways in which ocean water moves, that is, waves and tides. Let us get started. Ocean water is very dynamic. It is influenced by physical characteristics like temperature, salinity, density, external forces like the moon and the wind. Students, there are three types of movement in the ocean water. Current is the horizontal movement of water from one place to another. Wave is also the horizontal movement, but here the wave trains move ahead and not the water as in the currents. Tide is the vertical movement of the water. It is the rise and fall of water in oceans and seas caused due to the attraction of the sun and the moon, which occurs twice a day. The movement is vertical as the surface water sinks and the cold water from subsurface upwells. Waves are basically energy that moves along the ocean surface. As a wave passes, water particles travel in small circles. The energy for the movement is provided by the winds. The stagnant deep bottom water of the ocean is seldom affected due to this. Due to friction between seafloor and the ocean floor, water at the shoreline slows down. The wave breaks when the depth of the water is less than half of the wavelength of the wave. The open oceans have the largest waves. On calm water, when a breeze of 2 knots or less blows, that is, the wind speed increases and small ripples form and grow until white caps appear in the breaking waves. Waves break, dissolve or roll ashore as surf after traveling thousands of kilometers. Depending on the size and shape of the wave, one can determine its origin. Young waves formed by local winds are steep, whereas waves from faraway places and another hemisphere are slow and smooth. The strength of the wind determines the wave height, that is, for what duration it blows, and the area over which it blows in a single direction. The wind pushes the water body in its course, and the crest of the wave is pulled downward by gravity. This is how water travels. Former troughs are pushed upward by the falling water, moving the wave to a new position. Water's motion beneath the waves is circular. When the wave approaches, things move up and forward, whereas when it passes, things go down and back. What are the characteristics of the wave? Wave crests and troughs. These are the highest and the lowest points of the wave, respectively. Wave height. This is the vertical distance between the top of the crest and the bottom of the trough of a wave. Wave amplitude. One half of the wave height is known as the wave amplitude. Wave period. As two successive waves pass a fixed point, the time interval between either their crests or the troughs is known as the wave period. Wavelength. Between the successive crests, the horizontal movement is known as the wavelength. Wave speed. It is measured in knots, the speed at which water moves through the water. Wave frequency. In 1 second time interval, the number of waves that pass a single point determines the wave frequency. Tides are characterized by the periodic rise and fall of the sea, nearly once or twice in a day, caused by the attraction of the sun and the moon. When meteorological effects like winds and atmospheric pressure changes, it causes the movement of water and is termed as a surge. They are not regular like the tides. Tides are difficult and complex to study, both spatially and temporally, as there is great variation in frequency and magnitude. Reason for the tidal bulges on the Earth are majorly Moon and comparatively to a lesser extent Sun's gravitational pull is the reason for the occurrence of the tide. Centrifugal force, which acts to counterbalance gravity, is another factor. The tidal bulge occurs on the side of the Earth that is facing the Moon, whereas, although the gravitational pull of the Moon is comparatively less on the other side, the centrifugal force causes the tidal bulge. The difference between these two forces, that is, gravitational and the centrifugal force, is the tide generating force. Earth's surface nearest to the Moon faces the bulge as the gravitational pull of the same is way more than the centrifugal force. On the other side, the net force away from the Moon is low, and hence the centrifugal force is at play. Horizontal tide generating force on the surface of the Earth is way more important than the vertical force that generates the tidal bulge. Bulges that happen on the wide continental shelves are great in height. After hitting the mid-oceanic islands, they become low. Moreover, the intensity can also be affected due to the shape of the bays, especially the funnel-shaped ones and estuaries. These are called tidal currents. When tides are channeled between islands, bays, or estuaries. Students, do you know which is the highest tide in the world ever recorded? In the Bay of Fundy in Nova Scotia, Canada, the highest tide was recorded. Let us now look at the types of tides. There are two criteria in which the tides are classified. Based on the frequency, there are three variants: a semi-diurnal tide, two high tide, and two low tide each day, with the high and low tides being of equal height. These are the most common type. Diurnal tide, one high and one low tide each day, with high and low tide being of the same height. Mixed tide. These have variations in height. They take place near the ocean across the west coast of North America and many islands of the Pacific Ocean. Based on the position of the Sun, Moon, and Earth, spring tides, the Sun, the Moon, and the Earth are in a straight line. The more straight the position of the three, the higher is the height of the tide. It occurs twice a month during full and new moon period. Neap tides. An interval of 7 days persists between spring and the neap tides. The forces of the Sun and the Moon counteract each other as they are at right angles to each other. Perigee is when the Moon's orbit is closest to the Earth once a month. The high and the low tide occurs, which is when the tidal range is more than normal. Apogee is 2 weeks later, when the Moon is farthest from the Earth, because of which the tidal range becomes limited and is less than the average heights. During perihelion, that is 3rd Jan, each year, the tidal range is way more with unusually low tides. Similarly, during aphelion, that is 4th of July, tidal range is much less than the average. Ebb is the time interval between high tide and low tide when the water level is falling. Flood or flow is the same time interval between high and low tide with water levels rising. Students, what is the importance of tides? Tides can be predicted in advance as the position of Earth, Moon, and the Sun can be calculated. It helps the navigators and fishermen. It prevents boats and ships from entering the harbor. The tidal height is important with respect to the harbors near rivers and within estuaries, which has shallow bars at the entrance. Helps in desilting the sediments and the removal of polluted water from river estuaries. Electrical power is generated from tides in Canada, France, Russia, and China. With that, we come to the end of today's video lesson. In the next lesson, we'll learn about the ocean currents. Stay tuned with Notebook. Have a great day ahead. Goodbye.